It may be cliche or just a staple of Metroidvanias, but today we're going to learn how to build this double jump to help your players reach previously unreachable areas. And we'll also cover some of the common edge cases that you might encounter and bugs as you build it and overcome those. So stay tuned. Hi, my name is Michael. Join me as we build an epic Metroidvania game in Godot 4 using GD script. This is the Metroidvania Forge. All right, so as we look at this double jump, we're going to take our regular jump and we're going to extend the state to support double jump. And I don't have it right now. I've added so that we can toggle it on with this button click. Okay. Toggle it back off. I'm going to show you how this interacts with our save and load system. We've already built that double jump variable into our player script, so it should be accounted for if you've been following along with the series. But really, the double jump is a state that happens most commonly when you're falling, right? That's usually because when you let go of the jump button, you enter the fall state and then you got to jump again, okay? We'll look at things like preventing triple jumps, because if you don't do this properly, you could end up with a state where the game gets confused, because if you enter the fall state before the jump state, what do you do there? Things like that. And otherwise, it's going to be pretty straightforward. You'll probably notice I've got some jump and land audio. Okay, so we're going to introduce that in today's video as well. Pretty straightforward and pretty simple, but something that our jump sorely has needed up to this point. So this will be a fun one, and I hope you guys enjoy it. All right, so I've modified my little playground scene here. Let me just show you. I've added this vaulted ceiling area here where the player is, and it's essentially just a way to test the double jump. So I've got these platforms up here that I cannot reach, and hopefully I can reach them once we implement the double jump. But make sure that you've got something set up that you can test your double jump ability with. And what you may want to do as you set that up is kind of keep in mind level design concepts. So, like, what are the heights I'm expecting the player to be able to double jump to? One thing that might be important, especially early on, is that there's some visible hint to the player so that it's obvious that, hey, there's an area I can't reach yet, but maybe once I can jump higher or have a double jump, I can reach it, right? So those are important things to keep in mind. So these are placed actually just a little bit high, not too high, because I can get on the boxes and I can jump up and see them, but you may want to have some things slightly lower. And then maybe in other areas, you want some double jump areas that are kind of almost not noticeable until the player has more abilities, right? But just something to keep in mind again as you design your levels. Okay, the beauty of a double jump ability is that we don't necessarily need to be creating new animations or anything like that, because we've got animations built in to our jump and fall states, and so those can just work. And what I'm going to be doing is actually, as I mentioned, building the double jump into the jump state. We're also going to have to incorporate code into our fall state as well, right? Because when we're falling, we can also do that double jump. In fact, by definition, almost all the time, we probably will be falling when we perform a second jump. So I'm going to go ahead and open both of these scripts, and I'm going to close. Well, I'm going to start by closing everything else, and we'll open things as we go. But we've got our jump state, and we've got a fall state. Now, the other script that I know we're going to have to modify here as we work on this is our player script, because both of the jump and the fall are going to rely on some critical information to know if we can double jump, but it's also going to be somewhat important to track how many jumps we've made. So maybe even if you were to implement a triple jump or quadruple jump, whatever, it would be good if we could have a common place where we can keep track of those jumps. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do that here in the player script, since, these things are only designed to work with my player. So I'm going to come up here first in the player and just come to, let's see, here where we've got the player stats region of my variables. And we've already added this double jump Boolean. Okay, we've not really used this yet, but we added that variable when we also built our save and load system and worked on some of that. So that's good. But alongside the double jump variable, I want to add one more, and it's just going to be called jump count, which I guess this will be an integer, and it'll be equal to 0 by default. So quite simply, we'll just use this to track how many jumps we've performed. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and save that, and that should probably be all we need there. One other thing I want to do, though, before we get into implementing this in our jump and fall states is I want to consider the audio because we currently don't have any audio for our jump, right? We've built a lot of audio stuff. Oop. So no jump on our audio, or no audio on our jump. So let's add the audio for that so that we have a little bit more feedback. Okay. And I'm going to build this jump audio in a different way again than we've built our audio in the past. So we could use our global audio player for that. And I think that's probably the best way. But what I've done with this Hurt audio in a previous video, I've made this little audio stream player for this guy and done so that if I were to play it a whole lot, I'm not spawning a lot of new audio stream players. I want to do the same thing with the jump and the land audio for the player. And actually the jump and the land audio, by land, I mean when he hits the ground, are probably the most appropriate reasons to do something like this within the player node. Another thing that I've mentioned in the past is I might go back to our audio system and build in some performance measures to the spatial audio playback. And we would implement basically an audio pool system so that we're not instantiating new audio stream players. We'll just have a certain count and just reuse them. And I think I'll probably do that. If you're interested in that video, and I can do it as a general video, but go ahead and drop a comment. And if I get enough feedback on that, I'll probably go ahead and record that. Okay, but what we'll do, I guess, before we hop into the states is just set up the audio. Okay, so one thing I want to do actually, if I'm going to add more audio stream players, I want to put them all underneath a node 2D here so that they're not just floating around. So let's go ahead and just add a node 2D real quick and plop it in there. And then I'm actually going to drag this node 2D just to the center of the player. I don't know if it's going to make much of a difference, but if these things are all centered on it, you know, then it'll kind of make some difference. Because I've done that, I've probably broken a reference to this Hurt audio. So let's set it to access as unique name. I'm going to duplicate it real quick. I'm going to call this one jump. Oh boy, come on, jump audio. It's important to make sure that as we set these up, that this is playing in the sound effect bus. That was something I missed when I set this up previously. So if you never caught that, go ahead and add it. Otherwise, it's not going to work properly with your volume and other things like that. We want to change the stream on the jump audio, and I'm going to go ahead and just search for it. There we go. Go to a little jump wave. Okay. Nice little sound there. And then let's duplicate one more time, and I'll just call this land audio. You see the land before you, Simba. I feel like that's like something from Lion King. Okay, let's clear this off. And there is a land audio. Okay, and this one sounds like this. Really nice, really nice. Okay, so we've got these audio set up. They're all set to be accessed by unique name. Let's give this node 2D a name. We'll just call it like audio streams. I don't know, something like that. I'm not going to reference it anywhere, but just so that it's obvious if it's collapsed. All right, let's go into our take damage state first, because we're going to have to update this path to our Hurt audio that we're playing, because it was, you know, like a relative path, but now we've got the unique name set up. So I'm just going to drag that in there, and we're already playing that. So we should be able to save and test this. Okay, Hurt audio still plays. That's good, right? Boom. Okay, next, let's go into our jump state. We need to grab a reference to the jump audio. Just bring that in there. And then down here where we're actually jumping in the enter function is where we'll add this. And we'll just do jump audio.play. Nice. Okay, that makes it a lot better. And lastly, we can come to our fall state. Let's add a reference to the land audio. And then here in the physics process, when the player's on the floor, we do land dust. Now we can just call our land audio.play. So this is going to sound pretty cool. So that's a lot better. We're not going to do anything else with the audio in this video, but one challenge I'd like to extend to some of you, I think something that would be fun, is to make the land audio dynamic. So depending on how far you've fallen, you might get a louder or softer version of the land audio. And just to give you a quick hint how you might do that, you can come into the land audio, and then you can set the volume. Okay, you've got volume dB and volume linear. You might need to research those. We've talked about them a little bit. And then what you'd have to do is figure out how far the player has fallen. You could probably get the player's position when he enters the fall state and when he ends it, and get a distance, and then develop some simple kind of algorithm that'll help you determine what the volume should be. Okay, I think that'd be cool. I'd like to see if you guys add that. Go ahead and comment if you do add that to your game down below, how you did it. Okay, now that we've got the audio in place, it's time to really start implementing the double jump. As I've mentioned, we are going to have to work in both our fall and our jump states. We've added this little jump count to our player. So let's start by looking at jump. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to want some of this code in the enter function to be separated, because this stuff gets called when we enter the state and it causes the player to jump. Now that's fine, but if we're going to be doing the second jump from the jump state potentially, then we need to be able to call this from a separate location. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut probably these two lines here, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to create a function that we'll just call do jump. Kind of silly, but we'll just make that, and then down here we've got a new function, do jump. We'll just paste this in here. Now this allows us to be able to call the jump functionality later if needed. And this might not be the most consequential step, but I think it's a nice way to abstract some of that. I'm going to go ahead and remove this debug indicator code because I don't think I'm going to use it again. You may decide to put some other things in the do jump, like the jump dust, but we're actually going to make our jump dust different if we're in the air as opposed to on the ground. And for now, I think it's going to work best here. But let's go look at this do jump function. And to some degree, I might be overcoding some bits of this, but I think it works good. And so I'm not going to change it, because otherwise I'll run into bugs, I think. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check our player jump count. So we've got that jump count that we just added. Okay, so if this is greater than 0, then this is what it means. That means we've jumped, right? And so if our jump count is greater than 0, then we could do another check. We could say if our player has, what is it called? Is it just double jump? Yeah, if double jump equals true, that means we have the double jump ability, right? By default, it's set to false. Actually, you know what? We should check if it's false. Let's do that. Let's check if it's false. And then, so if the player double jump is false and our jump count is already greater than 1, then I'm just going to return from this function. Okay, I'm not going to do anything. Also, we can put an upper limit. So what this says is, okay, we've already jumped once. Can we double jump? Yeah. And if you're going to build a triple or quadruple jump, then this next bit is going to be important. I'm going to put an elif, and I'm just going to say player dot jump count. In this case, I'm going to say is greater than 1, but you can just set that to whatever you might need a dynamic variable, right? But essentially what this says is, okay, it's greater than 0. If it's like 2, then it's like, oh no, sorry, we can't jump. 2 would be like a third time, right? That would be like a second double jump. So we're not going to let them do that. But then by modifying this code, you could enable that kind of functionality if you want to. Then in addition to this, the only other thing we have to do right now is we need to start tying this jump count in to our code. And just think through the process real quick. When we enter the jump state, we do some animations and effects. We do the jump, and then we have this stuff down here for buffer jump. We don't need to move that or worry about that. Okay, so then we come to do jump. We check if it's like a double jump or not, and then we change the velocity. We're just setting our y velocity to the jump velocity, and it needs to be negative so that it's upward, and we're playing the audio. The other thing that we should do, though, obviously, is if we're going to jump, then we need to increase that jump count. So we're going to say player.jump count. And we just say plus equals 1. Okay, that means we've done a 1 jump. Every time we call this, it will do 1 jump. Okay, now this shouldn't do anything yet, but maybe we give it a try and just see. We might be able to spam it and get it to work. But what's going to happen though is when let's just look at this code. See, when we release the jump, we enter the fall state. So technically, double jumps are probably going to exclusively happen from the fall state. But this way, it's going to help us. Well, if nothing else, it just moves all of this out of the enter function, so it's easier to look at. But then if for some reason you can hit the jump button again without having left the jump state, then this will still work, okay? Okay, let's move over then to our fall state, and let's look at what we need to do here. And actually, you know what? For the double jump, the fall state just requires more changes. It gets kind of funny like that. But let's just step through this whole thing. So we've got our enter function, and we're doing some things like making sure we're playing the right animation and setting a gravity multiplier. We've got stuff built in here for our coyote timer if needed. I'm going to add one other thing so we're going to have something that we're going to have to address here, and I'm going to do the code later, but I want to make a comment, and we need to handle jump count because what you'll find is that even walking off a ledge needs to count as a jump for the purpose of this double jump code. Otherwise, you could just walk off an edge and then do 2 double jumps in the air, right? I mean, you'll see. I'll demonstrate that, and then we'll come in here and fix it later. But also, we need to maybe account for some other situations in here, like the situation where we jump down through a 2-way platform is going to be similar, right? Because walking off an edge is one thing, but the way we jump off of a 1-way platform is by pressing jump from the crouch state. So I'm going to actually add this condition. So elif player.previous state equals, and then we just say crouch. Okay, so if the previous state was crouch, then I'm going to go ahead and just write this code right now. What we need to do is we need to set our coyote timer equal to 0, just like we did here if our previous state was jump or attack. But we also need to increase our jump count. I'm going to say player.jump count equals 1, okay? Because it'll say like, yeah, no, sorry, you just jumped. You just jumped down. You can't jump again unless you've got double jump. Okay, now let's go down to our handle input because here we're going to be doing stuff. Okay, we've got already an event is action press jump. We're already checking because this is how we do the coyote time, right? So if the coyote timer still has time left, then we know we can do a jump. That's fine. We don't need to change that. But we do want to do this maybe because we're setting our jump count here, and we're going to also be doing, actually, we're going to be doing it here as well. We have to be careful, and just to avoid any issues, if it was a coyote timer, then I want to reset our jump count, because if we just enter the jump state normally, it's going to increase the jump count on its own. So let's just say player.jump count equals 0. Okay. Because the only time we can do a coyote timer jump is if we haven't yet jumped and just recently walked off a ledge. Okay, so we'll do that there. This is just one way to ensure that our jump count is appropriate. But now we can add another condition in here. We've got this condition for our jump buffer time, which is fine. I'm going to leave that, but we're going to put one here. We're going to say elif. Well, I guess an elif needs a statement, right? So we're going to say if our player.jump count is less than or equal to 1, and player has double jump. We could say equals true, or we can just write it just like that. Okay, so this is a unique situation now. So if our player's jump count is 0 or 1, and we have the double jump ability, then we can go ahead and do a double jump. Okay, so I'm going to say, and again, this is one where if you're going to support like 3 or 4 jumps, you might need to increase that number. And at that point, it would probably be player.max jumps or something like that, right? You'd set up a variable to track that. But in this case, we'll return the jump state. Okay. You could build this into this somehow, but I wouldn't recommend it because here we're resetting the jump count. Here we're not. It's just easier to read too, to keep it this way. Okay, there's one last thing that we need to do, I think. Let's just scroll down. We've got our process function. I think that looks good. physics process. So when we land, I'm going to go ahead and remove that and remove that. Really, I think the only place we need to worry about this is right in here. So if our buffer time, if we have this buffer timer jump, that means we aren't even like we're not even going to enter the idle state. We're just going to go straight to the jump state. So in that case, this should be a situation where we hit the ground. We're going to reset our jump count. So I'm going to say player.jump count equals 0. So before we go back into the jump state from a buffer jump, we'll reset that. Now I'm thinking there's at least one other place we're going to have to reset the jump count. Yeah, so I guess what we need to do is, let's say we enter the idle state. We can either build this in out here, but you know what? The safest way to handle that, let's just do this. Let's just go to our idle state. If we ever enter idle, then we know we're pretty safe to reset the player jump count. So I guess just here in the enter, we can do this. I'll do it after the animation play. It doesn't really matter, but we'll say player.jump count equals 0. Okay. That way, the idle state, since it's a common fallback state, it's one that we tend to enter if we don't enter one of the other action type states. Okay. That'll help us reset the jump count. Let's go ahead and test. I think this actually should be enough. You know, I realized we kind of just went through and did a bunch of funky minor additions to code without testing. And might be confusing. Let's see. You can't double jump. Oh, but you know what? Let's look at our player script. Let's turn double jump to true. Hey, there we go. Look at that. I can double jump. Oof, I can't make it up there. Maybe if I'm on a box. Perfect. Now I can get up here. Hey, we built a double jump, you guys. Let's do one other little thing, and then I want to show you one of those bugs. But one thing I want to fix right now is that the dust effect when we have performed a double jump, I want that to be different. I think I'm just going to, for now, I'm just going to use the hit dust effect, but you could use a different effect if you want to. You might need to create a new effect for the double jump, but I just don't like how that dust poof looks when it's in the air because it's too flat. So let's go back to our jump state. And right up here, right here where we're playing our visual dust, this jump dust, this visual effect, let's go ahead and put an if statement in here. Okay, so if player dot is on floor is how we'll start this. If we're on the floor, then we'll play this. But if we're not on the floor when we enter the jump state, right, then we'll just play the hit dust. So I'm going to say visual, oh man, I'm having a hard time. Visual effects dot jump, or not jump dust. We'll do the hit dust. I don't know what I said. I think I said hit dust. And we'll just use this same player global position. Let's test it out. Pew, 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 pew. Okay, there we go. So now there's some kind of impact or some kind of notification that we're getting an extra jump. Oh, man, it's actually kind of hard to get the height to get up here. It's like the exact height. Boom. Okay. Well, there we go. Looking good so far. Okay, I'm going to come into my playground real quick before I demonstrate this. I just want these platforms to be a little bit lower because they're just, I mean, they're just a tiny bit too high. I don't know. Let's just move them down one notch. Okay. Now, there's this issue I mentioned. If we just walk off a ledge and then do a jump, what you're going to see is like, I can jump way down there and I can jump again. You see that? That was like, that's kind of an abuse. That's not 2 jumps, right? That shouldn't work. You should only be able to do a double jump once when you've fallen, but I can do it twice. Oops, I waited just a little too long. I'm trying to just make it obvious that it's not a coyote jump, coyote time jump, you know? But yeah, we got to fix that, okay? That's 1 jump too many. All right, where did I say we're going to fix that? Look at our player. I'm pretty sure the fall state is where I want to do this. Handle jump count. Okay, so right up here, when we enter the fall state, how are we going to account for this? And what we can do is we can say if player.jump count equals 0. So we're entering the false state. Our jump count is 0. This means that we just walked off a ledge. Okay, this is where we're going to say, nope, sorry, that counts as a jump. So we're going to say jump or player.jump count equals 1. Simple as that. Now, if they happen to do a coyote jump, right, which was down here. Okay, if they do a coyote jump, we're resetting the jump count. So we're like, oh, okay, sorry, never mind. You did a coyote time jump. You can still jump again, right? But if not, if they jump anytime after that, now it's going to hit one of these other logic branches, right? So if it's not within the coyote grace period, then it's going to hit and check these two conditions and see if it passes either of those. So with that little condition, we should be able to fix this. There, only one jump. I can only jump once if I delay my jump. So there we go. Now we've got a pretty fully functional double jump feature. Now, one thing that we haven't done in this video is a way to enable or disable the double jump from within the game, right? And I've left this silly spike dummy thing in here. Okay, so the only way we can test the double jump feature and enable it is just through the code right now. One thing that we could test is if the double jump saves. And so maybe let's test that out real quick. So by default, this is probably false. In fact, a good test would be to just run the game, and I'm just going to hit my load shortcut. Okay, so I was able to double jump, and now I cannot, right? Let's test that again. Double jump, true. I can double jump. I'm going to load my game, and it's here in the save area, and now I cannot double jump. Okay. So it is working with our save and load system. And had we enabled the double jump and then saved it, it should do the converse. So let's see. Let's go ahead and find that save scene. Let's go down to my levels. Oh, you know what we could do? Let's do this. Let's go into player HUD. And I've got this silly button that I forgot to turn off. Give, or let's just call it toggle double jump, maybe. Okay, now I'm going to go into the script of this button. And let's see. What I built last time that I didn't show you was just spawning one of these spike test dummies. I'm going to go ahead and just delete that. But I do have a reference to my player. So now I can just say player dot double jump equals not player double jump. What that's going to do, because it's a Boolean, is it's just going to make it the opposite. Okay. So we should be able to click this button to enable and disable double jump. So right now it's enabled in our code. If I click toggle, now it's disabled. Okay. There we go. And so if I load my game, let's try this. So right now, no double jump. Let's toggle it on. Okay, it's working. I'm going to save my game. Okay, let's run it again. And then let's load. Hey, there we go. Got my double jump. Didn't need to toggle it on. Okay, so you can see that the way we've built our save and load system is supporting the double jump as far as remembering if we have it or not. And as I've mentioned, as we get to the end of this chapter, we are going to be building some ability pickup items that you can use to reward the player with the various abilities that we're creating. If you're anxious and you want to figure that out now, you can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, just stick around while we build the rest of the abilities, and we'll get there at the end of the chapter. All right, so thank you for following along today. Pretty simple video. I mean, we spent more time explaining things and implementing. This one was just a little bit tricky to make sure we get everything wired up. There's lots of ways you could implement a double jump, and many of you probably have done some things some different ways, and you may have some opinions on how I've implemented it. I'm happy to hear those in the comments. So feel free to drop one if you've got one. And otherwise, go ahead and give the video a like to help support my channel and help it grow, and subscribe if you're new. Now, in the next video, we're going to be addressing the dash ability. Okay, we'll handle that one next, and that's going to be kind of fun. We'll add a little bit of a visual effect to the player as he dashes so that it's a little bit more obvious that it's an ability, and we'll go from there. So I've already given you a couple invitations of things that you could try and implement as homework if you want to, like the variable audio volume for the land, or if you want, you could try and implement 3 or 4 jumps. So your double jump is a multi-jump. If not, if you don't want to attempt any of those, then go ahead and look at the dash ability. This will be a new player state, how I build it. And so that's one clue as to what I'm going to be doing when we get there. So if you want to work on it and get into that code on your own, then by all means, jump in and have fun. So thanks again for watching. And as always, we'll see you next time.